Hi, it's John Murphy, and welcome to another podcast in a Life and a Living series. Today is going to be slightly different because we are doing a series of podcasts on the back of the pandemic and the back of COVID, so that we really dig into the subject of how you lead through the whole COVID pandemic. And we're very fortunate that we have lined up a number of very senior executives, very senior leaders in global organizations who are coming to share their thoughts with you. And our first one today is Tim Humphrey, who is the VP of Chief Data Office for IBM based in North Carolina, and he's the most senior leader for IBM in North Carolina. And we really dig into, how, the challenge of how do you move an organization the size of IBM? How do you get that to move and to shift fast when you're faced with actually having to remove everyone from the office and get everyone working from home, a huge logistical issue. How he managed himself, how he managed his team, how he actually dealt with the challenges of teams of, in different circumstances where some people are at home working with children and homeschooling those children at the same time, how you manage that. And also what he learned about himself as a leader, what he learned about his team, what he might do differently, and how he sees the future in working place. So we're really delighted to have Tim Humphrey with us today to share his thoughts with us. And it really is fascinating. And Tim is a great communicator. If you want to listen to more podcasts, then go to my website, www.johnmurphyinternational.com. And there you will find loads of interviews with other really great people who share their wisdom with you. But in the meantime, sit back and listen to Tim Humphrey. Tim, thank you so much for joining us here on a Life and Living podcast. It's great to have you here to talk about leading through COVID.
Well, thank you. I'm very happy to be here and speaking with you again. And this topic is front and center on everybody's mind.
Well, yes, it certainly is. And I mean, I think it's fascinating when you think about, an organization like the size of IBM. I mean, we didn't get much warning about this. How do you move an organization of thousands of people to suddenly comply?
I was very fortunate to be in North Carolina when all of this started. And I would say I'm fortunate because, like you said, IBM's a global international company. And we had the fortune of watching this in China through our operations in China. So we actually began what we call our crisis management team. We assembled that actually in January to watch the virus and start to make preparations here in North Carolina. And so luckily we were sort of watching things unfold in China as everything was happening, which gave us more time to prepare. Typically, we have a crisis management team most often for things like a hurricane coming to North Carolina, which during storm season, we happen to get hit with a lot. And those are fast occurring events that you gotta adjust real quickly. But for this, we actually had time.
Right. Okay.
So we had time to prepare and get ready for what was going to happen because our medical experts were telling us it's a matter of time. It's a matter of more so of it's not a matter of if, it's more so a matter of when. Yeah. So we started preparing early.
Well, that was good. And I mean, to a large extent, there's kind of two elements. There's the logistical preparation, and then there's the human preparation. I presume that, the logistical stuff, while I'm not, diminishing it in any shape or form, but I mean, that's a process and you go through. How did you go about preparing your people?
That's a good question. It was if I go back into my time machine, back to February and then into March, it felt so uncertain. So one of the things I think I was struggling with, admittedly, and a lot of people were struggling with, is what's going to happen? What does this mean? Those types of things. So where we could, we tried to address those questions. And quite frankly, we didn't have all the answers for what was going on through people's minds. And, you know, in retrospect, we were trying to have all the answers, but we didn't. I mean, nobody knew the scale of what we were dealing with. And all you could do is feel that this was different and this was going to be with us for a while. So, you know, we just tried to put people at ease, and that we will definitely make sure our operations stay up, stay running. And then for the human side, as you said, every individual is different. You know, I don't have, for example, I don't have kids. I have a very nice situation here at home that I can work from. I don't have any interruptions. Some people do. So we tried to work with, you know, all of our various leaders to make sure that they were working in a way that would accommodate people with special situations, make sure that they were checking in on team members in a fashion not so much about their work, but about their health, their well-being, their stress levels, and things of that nature. The other thing that we learned in hindsight, or at least I learned in hindsight, was going to this environment where pretty much 90% of our workforce was working from home, except for those people that physically had to be in an office for things like rebooting a server or doing accounts receivable. For the rest of us, I saw what would amount to increased productivity. If you think about it, nobody was traveling. There were no conferences. There were, you know, there's no other things to do or go to. There's no going down to the cafeteria for lunch. So everybody's calendars were filling up with meetings, and people were staying, you know, doing meetings back to back all day. I know even I had a couple of bouts of eye strain because in a typical day I do some meetings on video, and then I do some in person. So I wasn't used to staring all day, every day at the screen. Struggle with posture a little bit, all kinds of things that I actually started to struggle with. So, you know, we quickly started to notice that and put some practices in place to help people deal with those types of things. And then, you know, we really made sure people focused on their mental health as well.
Yeah, and I mean, you as the leader, because you're the the most senior site person there for IBM. How did you find that you had to adjust? What adjustments did you have to make in your own role about how you were working and how you were managing and how you were leading your team?
Yeah, you know, one of the things I always appreciate throughout my career is visible leadership. When I say visible leadership, people that not just are there, but make you feel comfortable interacting with them, bringing up questions, and having a dialogue. So that became a little more difficult for me as a leader as I sit here at home. So I did start to do more things like setting up a lot more one-on-one time with people. So not just group meetings. I set up a lot more one-on-one time with people. I also checked in with people a lot more, and people that, you know, particularly that I might not see or might not interact with in a given work week. I would set time aside to just check in with people, you know, over some of our instant messaging tools and things of that nature. And then, you know, the other thing I realized I had to do is acknowledge the fact we're in uncertain times, show that that's okay, and then communicate to people that we're doing a great job. communicate to them the medical facts of what we know, and just tell them that yes, we do not know all the answers, but we're going to get through it. And so far we have, right? And it's interesting to look back, 6 months or so ago, and think about that time versus now. So now we're almost in a new normal, and I think, look, that's my role as a leader, is to try to help people through these times. But one of the things I will tell you is, having great teams around you and having great people, everybody adjusted.
Yeah. Yeah.
and that made it a lot easier.
Because one of the things that's come out in certainly conversations I've been having in different companies, and I did a webinar for an organization that had a couple of hundred people attending the webinar, and one of the things that came up in that is that they found that a lot of people felt that their manager was micromanaging them, that and it's and you can see it from both sides, because the manager on the one hand is trying to stay in touch and he's trying to have that contact, but on the other hand, not kind of, well, am I checking on you or am I checking in with you? And there's a difference. Did you find that you were kind of trying to straddle that fine line?
For me, no, not so much, because I purposely try to put boundaries on those types of dialogues, whether they're a phone call, a video conference, or an instant message. I try to put boundaries on it. So when I am reaching out to somebody about just how they're doing, look, everybody knows somebody that has a friend or a family member that's affected by this pandemic. So I put boundaries on that. So if I check in with you and say, hey, John, how are you doing? How are your friends? How are your family? I don't follow that up with, hey, let's talk about this meeting tomorrow.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I think that is a huge difference emotionally and from a psychological aspect, that, okay, you see that Tim is just checking in with you and just concerned. And I refuse to put work in those discussions, in those dialogues. And I think that helps, or at least I hope that helps.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, because if you think about your role, I mean, you're there, you're the site leader, you're a leader in the business, you're a manager of people, and also, on a personal level, if you look back and kind of those three different hats that you wear, what would you say was the biggest challenge, or the biggest challenges? Maybe they were different for each hat that you were wearing, but what would you say are the biggest challenges that you faced?
Yeah, I think as a site leader, trying to initially envision what the work area, what the workspaces would be like if we had to be in this mode for a long time. Huge challenge. I'm one of those visual people. I like to think strategically about what does success look like. So I knew the outcomes, but I couldn't get a good mental picture of what it would be like. So I knew the outcomes, meaning fewer people at work, no spread of the virus, ability to understand who's been in contact with who. But then visualizing that and getting from what the workplace looked like before to what it looks like now was a huge challenge. And luckily, I had a lot of people around me that sort of helped put those pictures together. And then once we did that, it made it much easier to start to think about the logistics of getting there, right? The tooling that you need, the communications that you need, the changes that you have to make. Simple things from, occupancy levels of the bathroom to taking away certain seats so there wouldn't be an urge or there wouldn't be a temptation to break some of the social distance requirements. So that was probably the biggest challenge for me as a site leader. as just a leader of people, being comfortable with the uncertain is a mental hurdle that I had to make. I'm an engineer by study.
Yeah, you're a data man at heart, right? So you like Excel spreadsheets and fact.
Exactly. So, I want data, and to me, it's a formula, and I can figure it out, and there's a result. This was not, it did not fall into any of those norms.
That must have
so that
been
was a
really
mental hurdle for me.
uncomfortable for you, though, was it? That must have been really uncomfortable for you.
I mean, very, very. I have to be honest, and everybody who knows me knows I'm like that. When I can't figure out something, it stays on my mind, and it works, and it works, and it's constantly there in the back of my mind. So I had to get comfortable with not knowing and get a little bit more comfortable with uncertainty, which was a huge challenge. And that was, more of a challenge in my own head, but that was big for me. Now, you mentioned one other dimension. What was?
Personally, just on a personal perspective.
Oh, well, I can tell you that one's easy. It was my own physical health. When I used to go into the office every day, and I used to do things like anytime I would have a one-on-one meeting, I'd do it as a walking meeting. So we would walk around our campus. We have a really nice wooded campus, and we would walk through the buildings, or on a nice day walk outside, and I would do those types of walking meetings. So I would get exercise throughout the day. Yeah. When COVID happened and I transitioned to working from home, everything went wrong physically. In the first few weeks, I believe I gained over 10 pounds. I like to say I gained my COVID-19. Some people talk about freshman 15 when they go off to college. So I gained weight. I also realized that the chairs I had here in my home weren't that comfortable. So my posture suffered. And then, as I mentioned to you, we started to work more back-to-back hours. So, I was struggling with things like eye strain. So I had to put some boundaries in place, put some me time on the calendar for reflection, for walking and things of that nature. I bought a new gaming chair. After all my research, I decided to go with a gaming chair versus an office chair or another office chair because, the gamers play video games all day, all night, and they have to have perfect, comfortable chairs. So
as it works for them,
I did that. And then I made it a concerted effort to try to lose the weight that I had gained. And part of it was a lot less exercise. The other part of it was I had food around me. I was working from home. So I was constantly munching. And as I would stay up at night watching the news and things of that nature, I was still munching. So I had to stop doing a little bit of that.
Yeah, well, I think that we can all identify with that. You mentioned earlier on that, as you said, it was, relatively straightforward apart from some obvious challenges about, working from home. And you did talk about, some people where they've got, children at home, they're homeschooling. Yeah, and that, I'm like you in the fourth situation. My children are grown up and gone, so I didn't have that challenge. But I really did feel for people who were trying to do that. How did you, as an organization, kind of make those people feel that you recognized it, and that and what support could you give them?
Yeah, we. One, you mentioned it. Recognition goes a long way. So calling it out, and one of the things we did early on is we had all of our managers do a pledge on leading in this environment. The types of things that you typically wouldn't think about. It's okay to have meetings with people off camera. And we would pledge to make that okay. It's okay if a kid runs into to be with their mother or father during a meeting, and instead of viewing that as a disturbance or a disruption, we would look at that as, oh, it's just a happy familial occurrence. So we had several dimensions of, how to lead in work from home times that we encourage all our managers to do. Plus, look, we have a lot of offerings to help people through, their physical health and as well their mental health. And we reminded people of those types of things. And we implemented some, new programming to help working mothers and working fathers with things like time off, et cetera. So, those are some of the things we did. And we encouraged teams to have people talk about what are some of the things that they were struggling with, if they cared to share, and what are some of the things they like to do, even if they didn't have kids. Like, what are some of their boundary things, walking the dog, for example, and lay those out, and then have teams plan their team meetings and their scrums sort of around those boundary type of conditions. And actually, it was fairly simple for a lot of teams to be able to do.
Yeah. And if you look back on it now, I mean, we're kind of the guts of 6 months into it. If you look back on it now, what would you do differently, if anything?
I'll tell you one thing that didn't think about when I said to the team, please work from home, and we had identified all the people that needed to continue working physically in the office. And when I told people to work from home, I would have said, not just work from home, but take anything you need from the office to make your home environment for work more productive, or just essentials that you need. So we experienced a lot of, hey, there's some files I need to get from the office.
Right. Yes.
Hey, I had an extra monitor in the office, and I didn't know we were going to be gone this long, so I didn't take it. I need to go back to get a monitor, a keyboard. I had a thing of hand sanitizer in the office, and I didn't take it, right? So, I sort of sent people home, but didn't give them the reminder of taking essential items that they would need. And so we had to put processes in place for people to safely come back and visit the office. And at the time, things were very uncertain. So we had to make sure that we cleaned afterwards, and we didn't have more than one person in an area, which was quite challenging for us. Plus, making sure people screened for symptoms and things of that nature. And we did things like temperature checking, because that was a good thing to do, and it was a requirement of local government. So, in hindsight, we spent a lot of time on that process, and it's just now settling down.
And, when you look back on it, what have you learned about yourself as a leader, and also what have you learned about your team? Because, there was no blueprint for this for anybody, and this was, and there's still no blueprint. So we're still kind of, shaping it as we go. But when you look back on yourself and your team, what did you learn about yourself and the team?
Yeah. Well, team first. If you would have told me 10 months ago that we could transition to 90% of our workforce working from home, in my mind, I would have probably thought that would be a disastrous event. That there would be lots of issues and problems, and we would the business would suffer. But that did not happen. So I'm very, very proud of the team for their resilience and stepping up to the challenge of taking everything that we used to do and going quickly to a new normal without any advance notice. So, for me, I think just it's a testament to what people can do. And it's really about people, but what people can do when challenged. So, one of the things it's taught me from my own leadership style is to put more challenges to people, and give more challenges to teams. And man, if you have creative, diverse, innovative teams, they can figure out some very great solutions to problems. So I think that's the thing I learned about the team the most. And then personally, we talked about it a little bit earlier. I realized that I can get over my own mental gymnastics and be comfortable with uncertainty. And this is a volatile and uncertain time, and I'm okay. I've made it through it, and I've hopefully been able to lead in a fashion that people respect and feel motivated by.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting, Tim, though, that we, one of the comments that I've got from a number of companies that I work with, and they were saying that, and it's kind of paradoxical. They're saying that silos actually got broken down, silos that existed beforehand, and to an extent, you would think that the remote would actually enforce the silo. But people actually said, no, we actually started to cooperate a lot more. So it does show in the right atmosphere and the right culture that people really will adopt, and people are highly adaptable, and they can do it. Because, I mean, you mentioned earlier on that productivity, not an issue.
Not an issue at all. And that doesn't shock me what you said. I've always been one to believe that relationships matter. And if you build deep relationships with people, it's easier to work on things. It's easier to take on challenges. And I've always said, if two people don't know each other and have to work on something, it's going to be more difficult than two people who have built a relationship or even a friendship. It's going to be easier for them to work through differences and things of that nature. And I think what's happened, as you called out, this traumatic pandemic that we're dealing with made people focus more on people. To our earlier conversations and not just managers checking in with teammates checking in with teammates. And as they did that, they connected more on a personal side. And I think, of course, that had to help them when they're working together, because, now when they're disagreeing, it's not like that's a guy that's John and I'm disagreeing with him and I don't like him. It's, oh no, that's John whose uncle is struggling with the virus, right? Yeah. And that's a different John, right? Now you become personal.
That's making that connection, isn't it? It is that personal connection. If you look into your crystal ball, and at some stage, whenever that might be, we will kind of get on top of the pandemic. But what do you see as being? What do you see as the new way of working post-COVID? I mean, what are your thoughts about? Because this has been people working from home is not new. People have been doing it, but not full time and not all of the people. So it's been a massive accelerator in that sense. But we're not going to go back, or the general sense that we're not going to go back to what was the old way. But what do you think the new way will look like?
It's funny. I just recently met with all of the executives in North Carolina. And I posed that question, not what do you think it would look like, but which would you prefer? Just to understand people's preferences. And, the choices were work from home full-time, work from the office full-time, or some type of hybrid approach. Overwhelmingly, it was a hybrid approach.
Yeah.
And I found that fascinating because I know a lot of those executives that responded. A lot of them are like me, in the office every day, except for days that you're traveling. So, I do think a hybrid approach is probably what we will emerge with. I believe, there was a mental hurdle for, I don't think it's just specific to IBM. I think it's for everybody, of a trust that you can work from home and work productively. And I think the world has proven that. And then the other thing I was thinking about, as we've brought a few people back to the office to work on business critical items, and we've prepared the office to be able to support working in a COVID world. I think about before COVID and some of the things you never really thought about. I personally wash my hands all the time now. The ability to, pass this virus from person to person so easily is something that I do think we have to think about as we even think about the physical workspaces and things of the future. I know restaurants are tackling this. So I do believe that the workplace will be forever altered. You will never be, with this experience in mind, you'll never cram people into small areas for extended times if you can help it. So I do think we have to reimagine the workspace again, which is okay, right? We are
absolutely. The other part is that, for global organizations like IBM, where you have a lot of people traveling and going from different. Do you think that will change? Because certainly from one or two large global organizations I'm working with, they're saying, we realize we actually fell into the habit of thinking, oh, I have to fly to Japan or I have to fly to Europe. And they're saying, you know what, maybe I don't.
I do believe that's changed. And I do think that is, will travel come back? Absolutely. Will it be what it was before? No, because we've proven to ourselves that we can do it without the travel and without the frequent trips, and we can still get the business outcomes and solve the problems we need. For example, even I was very impressed with one team did a big, massive workshop, and they did their what you would typically think of as Post-it notes on whiteboards. They did all of that virtually. Yes. And they did a multi-day workshop, and they planned in longer breaks so people weren't sitting for that long. And they accomplished everything that they set out to at the beginning of that workshop, which is something you would have said, oh no, we can't do that virtually. We have to be in person for, and actually no, we didn't. I've attended several virtual conferences that have been well done. IBM, we put on several virtual events that have been well done. Even nonprofit organizations I've been to have been able to do fundraising events successfully online, and they were pretty fun. So I do think, your point of, look, I think travel will come back because it is good to have some face-to-face and actually fellowship with people. But I don't think it will be considered as essential as it was in the past for every little thing.
No, I think that, it hasn't been a good time for the airline business, and I think they're going to be a bit challenged going forward. But Tim, thank you so much for taking your time. Just great insights. Great to hear what you've been doing with your team in North Carolina and beyond, and they're taking the responsibility as site leader. And I want to thank you for your time. It's been a real honor to have you here, and I appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us.
Well, thank you, John, and I always appreciate your chats, and have me back on again.
Hopefully it'll
be on a better subject.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. Cheers, Tim.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you.